Good evening and welcome to another edition of The Other Side. Folks might want to put your helmets on tonight because it could be a little bumpy in here. Just before we get started, we want to give a Dan Martin update. Dan apparently is doing better. He's at Spalding Rehab Hospital. Aaron, if you could run that clip for the folks at home. If you want to send him cards or anything, this is his address in Charlestown. I'm sure he'd be happy to get some cards, cheer him up. So anything we could do would definitely be a big advantage for Dan. We're also going to be showing this clip at the end of the show, so don't panic. If you're looking for a pen and pencil, we will be showing this again. With us tonight, I'm proud to say we have Mr. Cote sitting to my left, and our special guest, Mr. Matt McCarthy, former school committee member. Meeting last night was interesting, to say the least. I really don't know. I don't know what to say, so I guess I'll start with the most bombastic news we had. The closing of Lake Street was proposed by Mr. Cloutier. I'll let you guys start because I know I got plenty to say, but I figure let's give Matt the first shot at this one. What was your take on this? Do you think that was a feasible move?
Feasible, I don't know, but I think it probably should have come 3 or 4 months ago. It's certainly not something that should have been dropped in the middle of a budget. To come up with a feasibility study within, I think his date was March 25th.
Yep.
To come up with to do a feasibility study and come back to the committee for September changeover. So, we were involved last year with, coming up with Maple Street as an issue. And I was off the committee once that all took place. And from the sounds of it, Maple Street, it was difficult.
Yeah, it was tough. It was very tough.
So you're talking, trying to move a bunch of kids from Lake Street, and correct me if I'm wrong, pre-K, K, and first grade, and now you have to shoehorn them in somewhere. So I can't see it actually being a good thing right now. But looking at it for the future, it's certainly something you can, I guess it's a way to look at something out of the box, but I certainly wouldn't drop it so it's going to happen in 3 months.
Well, when we had the building committee, we looked at it. I mean, we've done this. We wanted to reorganize the district, and I mean, there were so many reasons not to do it. They beat us down over this. We wanted to close Lake Street. We looked at putting the kids back into the district. Well, there's just not enough room. You're not going to put preschoolers at Knox Trail or, there might be a couple classrooms open here, a couple classrooms open there, but to be sending, little kids up to the high school or something like that, we got a lot of feedback, and it wasn't good feedback on that. Basically, it was you have to put an addition on one of the schools. You have to put an addition on Wire Village. Then you can get your K through 6. But, and we would have had to start the whole process over again to get the addition in it, and it was shot down. So why we're going back here makes no sense to me. I don't know. And like I said last night, fresh eyes want to look at it, go right ahead, but don't waste too much time with it because I don't think it's going to happen. Sure. And I don't think it's the answer to our problems. We saw how much money we saved with Maple Street. How much money are we going to save with Lake Street? We're going to save some, but...
Well, I agree with you. I don't think it's the answer to the problems, but there's certainly some merit in it as far as transition for the kids. But and that's why my comments earlier, doing this very quickly is not the way to do it. This is something to look at over time, figure out how to do this correctly so that the district is arranged in a way that the kids, with Maple Street, I think it was in Spencer, you had 5 transitions.
Yep.
For the kids before when Maple Street was there. So reducing the transitions,
Excuse me.
good idea. Get rid of the school. But to figure it out in 30 days and then come up with a budget and then make the move between now and September, or by the time the budget is approved in September, it's a bold goal, and which I don't think it's possible. But and how much money will it save? Because if you start, the other piece is, where do you put the kids? Part of Mr. Cloutier's motion was for Dr. Mallory to go and talk to East Brookfield about this.
Right.
Right.
From my
That's not gonna
understanding,
work.
The regional agreement doesn't allow for us to bus kids across the the town lines, at the elementary level.
Right.
But it does allow for it at the two
That-
regionalized
right.
schools. So to me, it's now if let's say it does come back with a positive outlook for budget reasons, you still have that hurdle to get East Brookfield and Spencer to agree to amend the agreement, the regional agreement, which I think we all know at this table the chances of that happening
Yeah.
is pretty slim.
As it was explained to me, amending a regional agreement is a long, drawn-out process. It's not going to happen by September.
Especially when you're talking about amending a regional agreement with people that don't want to be in the district. Because as I said on our Facebook site, and thanks to the folks for supporting our Facebook site, it's been the support's been tremendous. Thanks again. One of the things that was brought up last night, and Matt and I talked about it after the meeting, I sat next to Joe Fish. And I leaned over to Joe when Mr. Cloutier proposed this, and I leaned over to Joe and I said, did anybody talk to you guys? And Joe was like, this is the first I'm hearing of it. So if this is something you're thinking about, now, if I'm on the committee, and Matt and Josh, you guys both understand this, you build a consensus. You build a consensus within the group first before you present something to the greater public, because it just makes sense. Move forward as a unit, a unified unit, or at least have people on board that are at least aware of it. I didn't feel, and I don't think you did either, Matt, and I know you didn't, that anybody else on that committee that I could tell immediately was aware that Mr. Cloutier was going to do this. And prior to the meeting, I saw Dr. Malvey and Kevin Hayes having a very long and arduous discussion on stage right, and the meeting ended up running over 10 minutes late, and I wonder if part of that, and this is purely a guess on my part, that maybe Kevin was trying to get Dr. Malvey to buy into this, because as you guys heard at the meeting, Dr. Malvey said, and to his credit said, he will not move forward with this if he doesn't find it to be economically feasible.
He didn't seem like he was sold on it. And I know I didn't know about it before the meeting.
That was a stunner.
You said I was shaking my head.
I was looking at you and I was like, I was going to take a picture and say, this is a picture of a very frustrated school committee member, because it just came out. It was like it came out of nowhere. You just thought about this over a long period of time and didn't bother to bring it up to anybody else.
You know what it does is
Seriously?
it just puts another element into an already complicated, an overly complicated situation, and a situation that has been artificially complicated at that. We could have done this in December. Okay?
And explain why we could have done it in December, Josh.
Here's the thing. The budget was settled. FY14 was settled at the end of November. The state came in and said, that's it. This is what you're doing. It had already been brought up at the meetings, at other meetings, going back to October. Boy, we should really be thinking about FY15. It's getting to be time to think about FY15. And we didn't. Nobody said anything. Nobody wanted to say anything. But the day that FY14 was settled, we could have scheduled the meetings to start this. Because I'll tell you, this budget that I have, all right, was generated and given to us in February. This was there in December. They had this information.
This
So
could have
I
been
mean,
done.
maybe they take 3 weeks and they put this together. But this, come on. We could have been doing this by the end of December, middle of December, at the latest, the beginning of January. We could have had the same exact thing. They've had this information. We wait until the beginning of February to get it, and then we cram everything into 3 days. And I think they realized that it doesn't work cramming things in 3 days, because there was a lot of questions, and we didn't walk away from those meetings with a budget. We walked away from those meetings with 8 or 9 questions that we sent them back with. And now we're going to answer those questions at a public hearing, before, after a public hearing. We have to make this decision. We have to get this to the town soon. So, I mean, this has been compressed, just like it was last year, but there aren't the extenuating circumstances that we had last year. We could have done this in December, I'm sorry. We could have started this at least in December. We could have had this conversation about Lake Street in December.
Well, to that point, I think back when we were serving on the building committee, looking at the Proudy Building Committee.
Right.
And prior to the building committee starting, we actually had conversations, open meetings, and scheduled meetings with East Brookfield and Spencer selectmen that we were going to ask talk to the OPM about the feasibility of moving 7th and 8th grade to do a junior
Right.
senior high.
Yes, yeah. I
Now,
remember
we ended up getting beat up when we went to the towns because they didn't want it. But it wasn't a shock for them that we were coming with that information. They just didn't want it, which is
fun.
that's one thing. You know, we got beat up for a lot of things in my 3 years.
No,
So,
we didn't. No.
But at least it wasn't a shock and then beat up. It was no, we just don't want it, and we think you're trying to rush us through, and we think you're doing the wrong thing, and that's the nice version of it. But it wasn't a shock of, you know, a bunch of people, you know, coming out with pitchforks and, you know, in burning us in the street. So
They've come close.
yeah, well, that's a whole nother story. So, but in this instance, you're trying to shoehorn all of this stuff. You know, I think back of the budget. You know, last year was pretty messed up. Is the nice way to put it. You know, year prior to that, it didn't go that smoothly. But we had an outline, and it took us almost 3 months to come up with the budget, and we were giving money back to the towns.
Right.
So, and then prior to that, Dr. Hicks was in, and Bob, you were on the committee with me, and we actually, it was about a 3-month process.
It was a very well. It was
was
the
a
way
long
the way I
process.
felt the process should have been done.
Think of how many times we met
was.
in libraries to go to meet with principals and department heads and ask questions, and you served on the capital improvement committee.
There was a lot of stuff going. There was meetings every week.
Yeah. So
Every single week we had a meeting doing something or a hearing, and everything was open. Contrary to what Mr. Hayes said, all these meetings were not only scheduled, they were posted, and everyone was aware. In fact, Mary Brainy and Leo Fayard were regulars at these meetings. We saw those two, at least, if not others, all the time.
Sure.
And I think part of my heartache with this is when Mr. Hayes and Mr. Cloutier were politicking for their jobs back in as early as like March, and they were coming to the school committee meetings, and it was a crucifixion. It was, and we've mentioned this before. It was an absolute travesty. And I remember, if you get back in the Wayback Machine with Mr. Sherman, you remember some of those comments that Mr. Hayes and Mr. Cloutier made. When we get the budget, we're going to be eyes on, and we're going to go over this line by line. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if this is a line by line budget, Matt, we saw last night, and Josh, that you sat there arduously, it was for one thing, I was stunned at how quick it was. Tuesday night I thought was fairly quick. Wednesday night, last night was even quicker until Mr. Cloutier dropped the bombshell on Lake Street. Now, my personal heartache with this is the same thing that Josh said. Josh had asked for a budget in December, then asked again in January. And you said Chris asked in January.
I think I remember. Was it one of the regional meetings? I remember sitting up on the stage. We were in the gym, and Leo Fayard had brought up something about the FY15 budget, and then I remember saying,
That's right.
you know, he's absolutely right.
that was
We
in East
really
Brookfield.
should be working. I don't remember if it was in East Brookfield or at Wire Village in the gymnasium, but I remember saying we really should be working on this FY15 budget because the FY14 budget at that point was what it was. I mean, we weren't going anywhere. We weren't agreeing on it. So it was let's get working on this. And then November happened, and you know, we went through all those motions. The state came through, and we, you know, I think it was Chris that said, you know, let's start working on this FY15 budget. I sent an email and said we should be scheduling meetings. We should be doing this. And the response was, we're going to present the budget to you at the end of January. And, you know, quite frankly, at the point that I'm at on this committee, my days of fighting and picking fights with people they've come and gone.
I get it.
I'm not picking brand new fights with people. If this is how they want to do it, I don't like it, and I'm not going to be happy about it. But, you know, this is how you're going to do it.
But the other piece of this, Josh, and we talked about this last night, Bob, was when we sat through those budgets. It's not so much last year, but prior to that, we seen multiple budgets, and
Absolutely right.
up on Monday night. He said, you know, we seen a level services, level funded,
Yep.
and 5%, and then throw everything you can think of to make this district the ideal district. And
There was
Dr.
4 different
Malvy's-
budget plans.
His answer to that was, well, we're in a fiscal crisis, and we're not going to even look at that. But okay, well, you're in a fiscal crisis. Maybe you're not going to do it all, but why not at least see it? See where we are.
At least raise the
as
issue.
a district, so that you have an understanding of what's missing, and where, if level funded is here, and what we really need is up here, then let's figure out how do we get there.
Let's have that conversation.
Yeah, so that the community knows, because I don't think, there's some battling between the towns and the school district, but I think ultimately a lot of people in this community support education. They just don't support crazy spending, and that's and that's fine. But you got to at least tell them where you are and how you're going to fix things. It just seems like it's thrown together and very quickly.
This is based on last year, the budget that the state set, which is the bare bones. If you look, and this is even less, if you look at this budget, this is a disaster. There's nothing in here. There is just, we took the teachers away last year. Now we're taking everything else away. So we've taken teachers, we've taken their aides. Now we're taking their supplies and materials. We're taking every bit of building maintenance. Talk about playing Russian roulette with buildings that aren't maintained very well. But you're cutting the high school $2,500 out of building maintenance. I mean, really? That's a joke. How can anybody justify that? They're gonna sit there and say, well, we need to save somewhere and we need to make tough decisions. I'm getting tired of that excuse. You're playing a very dangerous game. And then with the DSAC report that we just got, that they basically tore us apart and told us we sucked, like I've said a few times on the show. There's no real nice way to put this. And then we go and do this. We take last year's budget, which was a bare bones budget, and we make it a little bit worse. Have to increase it a little bit because the price of everything goes up. But we make it a little bit worse and say, we really don't want this, but here's the $24.1 million budget. It seems like a strange way to do it. You're right about the options. We've always had options. We would have had this budget. This is the worst case scenario budget. And now this is what it looks like, $500,000 more with these programs in it, and it would have moved up. And that would have made a lot more sense. But, I mean, we just kind of...
Yeah, it doesn't... Yeah, because I wouldn't say this is the worst case. Worst case would have been level funded. A level funded.
I don't know
budget
if we
is
could
worst
function at that.
case. I agree.
I don't know if we could function.
That's why I think it's worst case.
Excuse me 1 second, guys. Matt, can you check your belt pack?
Sure.
I just think if we went to level funding, we would... It would be horrible.
Well, you know what the problem with this is, and it's continued to be
40
is,
kids in a classroom at that point. I mean, what do you do?
Matt brings up a good point when he says, when he's talking about, people willing to fund education. They are, but they need to be told the truth. And I think
we have trust issues.
Oh, trust issues.
We have major trust issues.
My ex-wife had less trust issues. It's like, are you kidding me? It's like you go through 2 budget overrides. Then all of a sudden you find $830,000, and as Dr. Malvy so succinctly puts it, we got that in reductions. Well, how come those reductions weren't brought forward prior to October 26th? And when I speak to the selectmen, they don't have a lot of faith in what's going on because they're being told one thing, and then all of a sudden, Dr. Malvy discovers, unearths, however you want to put it, almost $1 million.
Whether it's discovering, taking money that was set aside that nobody knew about.
No wonder we got trust issues.
We've got trust issues. I think the best way to go about dealing with this would have been to say, all right, you guys started, what was the budget number this time last year? Was it high 25s, 26.4?
I believe it was 26.4.
26.4.
Yeah.
So we went from 26.4 to 23.5, 23.8, whatever it ended up being. That's a huge amount of money.
And the state put us there.
And the state put us there. And that was us cutting programs. We took a ton of teachers, ton of aides out. But that whole lump of money, if you want to get some trust back, make a spreadsheet and show where every bit of that money came from. That's what you've been asking for.
Been asking for a forensic
it's-
audit for 4 years.
And I don't know if you're going to get that.
We need
we've
to get
been
that.
asking for
We
years.
need to get that.
But even if beyond that, if you at least got something that showed $26.4 million, here's the reductions down altogether, because we did it in steps. You know, when Rich Squartino was here, we went from 26.4 down a little bit. Then we went down a little bit further.
Right.
And then Dr. Malvey came in and we went down some more. And then we went down. And so this has been 4 or 5 steps of going down with 4 or 5 different explanations. And now the explanation is, well, it's all reductions. Well, then show it to us. I think that would be big on getting some trust back, because then at least you're seeing it.
And do you notice that never happens? And I've said this to Dr. Malvey before public meetings. I'm like, where is the cable access? You know, coming in and talking about this. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think Aaron told me they're doing a State of the Towns
of the
Monday
Town,
night with Gary Woodbury. And he's going to explain. You know, if you don't explain things to people, and I'm not talking you got to break it down like we're 7 or 8, but just explain to me how we got from where we were to how we got here, and show me the numbers and make that work, and explain that $830,000 where that came from. You know, I'm tear-assed that we had to go through 2 overrides to get to this point. Totally divide the town. I mean, there was 2 factions of this town: those that wanted the override, those that didn't want the override. And instead of being a unifying kind of committee, this committee has been nothing but acrimonious since Mr. Hayes and Mr. Cludier have gotten on.
We can't unite a community if we're not unified ourselves.
And on top-
I mean, you see how the table is set up, right?
yeah.
I mean, come on, you got the superintendent. He's the neutral zone in the middle, and then you've got us and them, and we fight a lot less than we used to, but we've been fighting the whole time. And it's in the DSAC report, the combative nature of the school committee, and they're absolutely right. We are combative.
Well, when you get 2
we fight
members
with
that
each
come on-
other. I don't know. We have been fighting with each other a lot. We have completely different ideas on how this needs to be done. I really do think getting that list and showing all those reductions. And I think the other thing is just, if you don't believe what's there, just open the books up. We've got nothing to hide at this point. We've got no money.
But they're
We've
not
got nothing
showing
to hide,
anything.
so do it. Just put it all out there.
Well, you wouldn't think it would be that difficult, because I know when Mr. Scrutino was here, all those budgets were done on a spreadsheet, and there should
Everything
be
was on a spreadsheet.
all you really have to do is take that information, all the different iterations, and show where the changes are,
Yeah.
from one iteration to the next, and you would figure out what line items changed, what services decreased, what services stayed the same, from each budget all the way down until the October district-wide meeting and the state setting the budget.
Yep.
Exactly what happened. So why it's so difficult, I don't quite understand, because if I went back and got all the paperwork that I had and then got all the budgets that you had from the time I got off the committee until
we
now,
could do it.
Should be able to track it.
you should be able to do that. And you would think that the people in the Blue House should be able to do it a lot quicker, because it's just a matter of, okay, this said 100,000, then it said 90, then it said 70, and this is where you ended up.
And Rich said he left all of those spreadsheets with the new business manager, so they're in there.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, that guy was great for spreadsheets. He made spreadsheets for everything. It was unbelievable
Well,
how
you
much
can't track
information
where
he
everything's
had.
going if you don't have it written down and you don't have
Yeah,
an outline
he-
of what's going on.
he was
you
great.
taught me that when we were on the school committee. It's like, look, just follow the money.
Yeah.
You know? And the irony here is, we're an education system. We teach people how to perceive, how to learn, how to disseminate information and be able to regurgitate it back. And we can't do that.
No.
As a school committee, that we can't do it. We can't. The superintendent, Dr. Malvey, loves the sound of his own voice. If you sit there and listen to him talking, he just gonna go on and on and on, and it's like, and say nothing. And when we ask him for information, and we've asked for information, and we've been not stonewalled, but we've been economically put in a corner. First, it's the first time we asked
That
for
would be
information.
stonewalling.
It was $438 to get this information. Then the second time, oh, well, it's $90 to get this information. It's like, and I understand that people's
Keep
time.
asking. Eventually, it'll be free.
Well, we have asked, and eventually we're
Keeps
going to get the
dwindling
answer.
down and dwindling
We're going
down.
to get the answer eventually. But the point is, you know, for an organization that teaches people and has the ability to educate, we have a total lack of ability to educate the public and say to the public, we need an override. Here's why. They can't seem to get from point A to point B. All we've got is Dr. Malvey and a couple other members saying, well, I think we should close Lake Street. Well, where are we going to put the kids? Well, we don't
We
have
haven't
enough
figured
money.
that out yet.
We don't have enough money, but yet when we needed that override, did anybody step up to the plate? Or did Dr. And this is the more important part, did Dr. Malvey ever get off his butt and go down the hill and talk to the selectmen, or go to East Brookfield and talk to the selectmen and say, look, here's where we're at, and open up the books and show them? No. It's like East Brookfield didn't even have a member for the MTA until somebody finally, until one of the, I guess it was Spencer, from what I understand, that finally reached out to him and said, and asked Joe Fish about being an alternate. It's like, you know what? East Brookfield is part of our district. You know, both towns may not always get along, but as long as they're part of this district, that's the way it needs to happen. And Mr. Cludio last night, giving that condescending lecture on what a district is, I felt much better afterwards when he explained what a district was. I went home and I slept like a baby. I'm like, well, now I understand. It's like, you know what? People don't need to be talked down to. You know, be honest with the voters, be open with the voters, and I've said this about every aspect of politics, and you two know better than anybody, this is the most political job I've ever seen. School committee, without a doubt, because you've got people with alphabets after their names who are a hell of a lot smarter than you, and more than happy to tell you that. And we'll get into that with the overseer. That was an interesting conversation. But the problem is there's no, and I'm not even talking about transparency. Dr. Naiman ruined that word for me forever. But the lack
He really did.
Face it,
It
come
is
on.
ruined.
I mean, the lack of faith in this district is
ruined.
astounding. I mean, like I said, I was talking to somebody the other night, and they said, would you vote for an override? I said, not until somebody shows me the money.
I
Bottom
think
line.
the other piece to that, though, is we don't have any stability.
None.
You know, and we haven't had any stability in a long time. And who
At a couple
who
levels.
in their right mind is going to give anyone money without stability? You know, whoever's in that Blue House is an interim superintendent. It's a short-term gig. We all know it. So there's no stability there. You know, look around the schools. You know, we finally, you know, it's great. Okay, high school is pretty stable.
Mm-hmm.
Joyce came in over at Knox
years
Trail
ago.
a couple years ago. We have an intern principal
At Wire Village.
Wire Village, which, and there's all sorts of things going on there. That place was, I don't want to say a mess, but it was a little out of control
It was
prior
called
to
Wild,
Rich Maha.
It was called Wild Village.
Yeah, but then Rich came in, did a great job, started to stabilize that school, and then everything hit the fan, and he grabbed a life raft, and
He
you know,
got
more
out
power
of
to
there.
him. I liked him. I
I
liked
liked
him.
Rich,
You know,
yeah.
I liked him very much, and I was glad he landed on his feet. But now we have something over there. We have an intern principal without an assistant principal, and it's going back to where it was when it was absolutely crazy. You know, there is some stability out in East Brookfield now.
Yeah, Ron seems
know,
to have
Ron
a pretty
came
good.
on a few
he's got
years
a
ago,
pretty
and
good.
he's
Yeah.
doing a good job.
He's got a good rap on that district,
But
from what I understand.
right now, you know, you lead it from the top down. I don't see this contentious feeling amongst the taxpayers, the towns, the district going away until, you know, a superintendent search starts, maybe.
Don't get me started.
that-
Let's,
Don't
you know,
even get me started.
That
You
was-
know,
you
maybe bring it up.
Yeah, I do, because you know, why are we? What are we waiting for?
Where's the
I
letter?
understand
Didn't
why
you
are
hear,
we?
Mr. Cludia? We don't. We it takes 6 months to hire a superintendent.
Well, you know what, and that's
I mean,
fine.
It's all
But
fine and good, but then why?
didn't we
Let's
start?
start it.
What was going on in June?
Well, the thing that amazed me
Why? You know, you're paying Dr. Malvey whatever you're paying him. I don't know the exact figure.
148,000.
148,000. Okay, so if it takes 6 months, and I understand you were involved in trying to set a budget and you know all that craziness, but okay, let's test the waters, see who's out there.
We could
who
have
bring
posted
in.
the job
Yeah, at least post it.
back in
See,
back
you know,
in
if you get-
September. If you really wanted to, you could have put it out there. That letter from the DOE says that you have to try to hire a superintendent that isn't retired. We
And I
have to
brought
do
that
it.
up.
They're not going to give him his, supposedly, if the DOE stands behind what they put down on paper, they're not going to give him another waiver unless we at least try to hire somebody. Well, nobody's tried to hire anybody, and this is starting to look a lot like last year.
Were you at
I
the
mean,
DSAC meeting? You really don't think they're going to go rubber stamp that? Because Ted knows Mary, and Mary knows Bill, and they all went to school
I don't
together, and they
know.
work together. It's a rubber stamp, Josh. I'm telling you.
That aggravates me
is.
that we haven't done anything with that. You know, but well, since I've been on the committee, we've had four superintendents.
Well, let me tell.
There has been 4 superintendents at school committee meetings since my first school committee meeting was Ralph Hicks. Then my first and second was Ralph Hicks. Raisin took over. He did his time. Deb took over. And now Dr. Malby took over. So 4 superintendents. There's no stability there. And then look at the school committee. How much of the school committee is turned over? We were a new school committee when I started. I mean, you were what
I only lasted 3 years.
You were in your second year when I started.
Yep.
Mary was brand new. I was brand new. Chris had been there for a little while. John had been there for a little while, and Kurt had. And now,
You know, that's the problem, is you have these school committee jobs are jobs. You know,
They
we
are.
all know it sitting here. And you're asking people to volunteer for a job that also makes them liable in some aspects. And not only that,
You're open to lawsuits.
You're open.
Absolutely.
That's, so and you're open to just getting the crap kicked out of you by whoever wants to say whatever about you. So and that's it's the tough part. How do you get average Joe citizen to step up? You know, to step up and do this. It took me probably a year. You know, I spent 5 years on the finance committee. I came into this. Okay, I understood the budgets like you said, but those were very confusing because you'd always say, well, I don't quite get this. This isn't going on. Oh, well, this stuff is over on this page because it's a grant, and you have to understand that it's not in the regular budget. It's over here, and it doesn't make any sense.
It was
but
deliberately
you'll
made
figure
that
it out.
way.
Well, but that's how a lot of school budgets are. Things are buried and twisted and turned, and it makes it very difficult. So by the time you figure this out, your term's up, you have to run again. Now you've been beaten up for 3 years. There's not too many people who say, "Oh yeah, let me do this again."
Let me get
for
beat
another
up for
3
Can I have
some
years.
more? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, yeah. Thank you, sir. May I have another? It's you know, when I was done, it was it was relieving, you know. But so now you're gonna have that same turnover.
Yeah.
You know, and from what Mr. Cloutier said when he was running last year, he stated this to me, that he only planned on staying on that committee for 3 years. So now you're going to have that changeover. I don't know what Mr. Hayes said, and I don't even know if Mr. Cloutier is going to stay 3 years or go longer.
I don't think he'll go any longer than that.
But in that case, you're not going to have anyone with any longevity. You know, so right now the person with the most seniority on that committee, I believe, is Kurt.
Kurt and Chris, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they run together? Did
Yes.
they run at the same
Yeah,
time?
they ran at
okay,
the same time.
So the both of them. You know.
So you basically you have 2 guys out of 7 that have been there for a while and seen all of the different tricks. And I can tell you when you get elected to the school committee, you guys know this. They give you a little white binder at that MASC thing
Briefing.
that they do at the 2-hour thing, and they're like, here you go to your first school committee meeting. I remember sitting down in the superintendent's office before the school committee meeting. I had no idea what was going on. I had my packet, I'd read it. I knew it, but I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't know anything about expenditure reports. I didn't know anything about budgets or policies or anything like this, how anything is developed, how a budget's developed, how policy's developed. I mean, it was unbelievable. And they just throw you into it, and then, yeah, you're kind of left there to hang,
flounder.
you know? I mean...
You flounder for a little while.
But then they come back and
Figure it
they
out.
say, you didn't get enough training. The DSAC comes back and says, well, you know what? You guys need to train more. So we're going to do that MASC training again. And it's like, I did that. It was useless.
That whole 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's 2 hours of training. I don't know any job that actually you're going to be in charge of $25 million, and you get
Yeah.
2 hours of training. Have at it.
Here's a giant corporation,
Yep.
and we're going to put you in charge, and good luck.
Yeah.
No,
And not only the money, you also have to understand education. And most of us don't come from an education
No.
background. So we're trying to, the average Joe citizen is trying to do the right thing for the district, the schools themselves, the kids, trying to make sure you're not pissing off employees, keeping taxpayers happy.
And contrary to popular opinion, you didn't take this job to ruin the school system because you have kids in the system, which amazed me during that whole diatribe against the school.
Well, and then people attack you, and I think that really hurts. Because nobody's goal was to destroy the school system. Nobody's
Absolutely not.
I'll go back to what I've said before. Anybody who thinks that this disaster happened in one shot, 1 year,
No.
one budget,
No,
you're
this was coming.
you're delusional. This was coming, but we just really brought it out there. We made it front and center. But the personal attacks, the nastiness. Why would anybody put themselves through that? Why would anybody want to?
I don't know,
wanna
Matt,
bother
why are
with
you
that?
running again?
I said I'm writing you in.
That's not true.
It was Tuesday night.
Yeah, my wife's watching, I think. So
You guys are talking about the MASC, and it's funny because Tuesday night the financial overseer was there, and his name was Roger Young, and he got up and he gave his little speech, and he got up, and when he got done, he walked out of the room. So I followed him outside, and I said hi, and I explained who I was, and that we do the show. And I spoke to him and I said, "Do you have a couple minutes?" And he said, "Yeah, okay." So I pulled him off to the side and I said, "Listen, I got a question for you." I said, "I keep hearing internal controls. You now have internal controls." I said, "Do you understand we had internal controls prior to Dr. Malvey and prior to Dr. Naaman?" I said, "We got budgets every month. We got budget updates." I said, "But superintendents can move around money." And he looked me dead in the eye and he goes, "No, they can't. Not without school committee approval." I said, "Roger," I said, "let me explain something to you." I said, I've been through three. I said, "This is my third, not counting Deb Zablocki because she was an interim." I said, "This is my third superintendent that I've dealt with." I said, "The first one hid $800,000 on us, asked for an override, and then told us at the end of it, when it was all over and Dr. Naaman took over, I remember Ralph getting up in a meeting and saying, and I left the district with $800,000, and it's like, you might have wanted to tell us, because we were looking for it on the school committee, Matt, if you remember. Then you got Dr. Naaman doing his, a Ouija board, mofo shuffle here, with the money. And I said, and then I explained Dr. Malvey and the $800,000 showing up, and he goes, "Well, what's your point?" I go, "Are you paying attention?" I said, "We didn't know this money was there." I said, "We're following all the information. The former school committee with Dr. Naaman's following all the information. The guy's hiring teachers all over the place. Nobody has a clue." And he goes, "Well, the school committee does have how did he put it? They have an interest, and they should take more of a step forward to do this." And he said, "There is training involved." And I said, "Yeah, MASC training for 2 hours to run a $26 million business." And I said, "Don't forget, it was the MASC that told us Dr. Naaman was the best of the best in that list, and we paid $10,000 for." And he looks, and I'm asking him some other questions. I asked him about a forensic audit, and he goes, "Oh, well, you really don't want to do that." And I said, "We really don't want a baseline. We don't want to know that somebody's actually moving money around without our knowledge." I said, "I've seen it 3 times now." And this overseer what else did I ask him? About zero training. I said, "No." I said, "Do you want to talk about training?" I said, "Where's the fiscal training to teach this board now how to read these budgets?" I said, "Is anybody going to come in from the state?" I said, "Oh, we're going to have to pay for that, obviously." I said, "Because we're paying for you." And he just kind of looked at me, and I'm like, "Look, there's no training here." I said, "There's no mentoring process when you get on a school committee. There's absolutely no training for a district that has shown it's been in peril financially. There's nobody coming in and saying, 'Look, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to look for.'" I said, "That should be like a 4 or 5 hour course." I said, "There was an MASC course that recently just brought our new folks up to speed. Do you think they're any better qualified now to make monetary decisions?"
These internal controls, the interest that the school committee is supposed to take. What are they talking about? I mean, we get the expense reports, okay? And if an expense report is handed to you and it's not worth the paper it's written on, then what's the point in having it? You have warrants. You know what those warrants look like. I mean, we're not. I did see a couple of very detailed warrants when Rich Scortino was here, and it broke them down piece by piece
Yeah.
and explained to you what they were. But the usual warrant, that book that has the tabs, it's just a line that says sign it. It says this is payroll or this is this, and that's what it does. It gives you a total, but there's no backup information there like the few that I saw with Rich.
No, even when we first got on the committee with Dr. Hicks, that those first warrants, it was a line item. It would say
just signed the book.
French River Collaborative, $2,400. There was really no explanation for it, so you just you scan through it, but after a while you're saying, okay, well, none of this seems out of the ordinary, and
But how do
okay,
you know what's
and then you get
ordinary?
handed a payroll, and it's like, okay, you need to sign this today because we need to do payroll tomorrow. Or you get the phone call saying, when we were on the committee, we had to have at least 4 signatures on
Can you
that
come
payroll,
down?
and
I
they
still
were
get
calling
that
us
phone
all
call.
over the state trying to get us in. Get one more person. Can you come in today because we can't do the payroll? Payroll's ready to go, but we can't do it because we don't have a 4th signature. So you'd go into the building and they'd say, "Here's the page to sign. Just sign it."
Yeah, do it quick.
And you'd
quick,
say,
quick.
"Okay,
We
let me
gotta go."
look through it." Well, I need to start this. It's like, well, do we have any time to look at this information? You really didn't. And I don't know if that's just in this district or every district, or and that's the part of the controls and the training. Like, how do we figure that out as the average person walking in? Right. Let's say the next person who runs for school committee for your seat. How do they know what they're signing? No, it's not like the business manager comes down and explains you line by line.
Or shows you a
what's-
bill,
Right.
and here's what you're paying for.
Yeah.
But
And
those-
and I said that we had this conversation once before, and I had this conversation with Matt a couple times. I said to Roger one time, "What am I signing for?" Because as a business owner, I don't want to sign for anything unless I know, because I'm paying for it, and I'm still paying for it not only as a school committee member, but as a taxpayer. Right. And Roger, and I kid you not, he pulls out. Remember, he used to carry that 3-leaf binder that was, I swear to God, was about 5 inches thick, and he goes, "It's all here." And I'm
Find
like,
it.
Seriously? So it's like, because you spend literally your first year just
You're
trying
just trying to figure out what's going on.
what the heck is going on.
And from there, the 1 year I spent as the chair of the committee, that was interesting because then all of a sudden there was other stuff you needed to sign, that's another piece of information that you're trying to figure out. At one point, the end of the year, and I forget what they ran the revenue anticipation note.
Yep.
I walk in and the treasurer at the time says, "Well, I need you to sign this. This is so we can actually take a loan." And I was like, "Well, am I even allowed to do this?" I didn't even know that was my job as a chair. No one ever.
Nobody explains
no
to you
one
what you're
told-
going to do as the chair.
No, and so I'm signing basically a note, for a loan to the district for like $1.5 million.
How is that responsible, Matt? I mean,
well, and
not
that's
on
the-
your part, but I
well,
mean,
that's
how
the
is that
thing is that there was
responsible
no
as a
training.
district?
So I was like, well, before I sign this, we need to sit down and you need to explain to me what I'm signing, because what am I liable for? What happens if we don't pay it back? Where's the money coming from? Why are we doing this? I've never
Are you
heard
going to
of this
come looking
before.
for me because I signed for this? And that's
Exactly.
the
I'm
other
not
part
putting my
of it,
name on
too.
something for $1.5 million. I don't have $1.5 million to give back. So, but the state just assumes that you're going to figure this all out somehow, and I guess the people think that the taxpayers think that that the average Joe citizen serving on the school committee knows everything as they're walking in.
And you know what? I don't think, and I've been harsh with people before on this, but I don't think that's totally unfair because they assume that you're getting some kind of training. What they don't understand is you're getting a 2-hour blow-by course by Ted. What's his last? Ted.
No, that's
Glenn
Glenn
Kuchar.
Glenn Kuchar.
Glenn Kuchar, who gives a 2-hour course that says, "Okay, don't take any money from
He
anybody.
says, "Don't screw this up." is what he
Don't
says.
meet more than 3 of you in a room at one time and talk about school business because
Yeah.
that's an open meeting law. I mean, it's a very cursory approach. And then, of course, they
Don't
give you the
stick your
huge
nose
book.
where it doesn't belong. They give you the owner's manual, and the owner's manual doesn't cover a lot of stuff.
But they don't give you the keys. They give you the false keys. They give you the key for the trunk and bury the bodies.
So
It's
you
like,
come
that's
back to
about
these
it.
controls, and I still wonder, you're supposed to be watching the finances. You get that blow by blow expense report. You get the line item transfers, and you have a budget to put it against. It's only worth the paper it's written on.
And you know what tears me up?
That's what really gets me is it's only worth the paper that it's written on. And if something gets screwed up or if something is omitted,
Yeah.
it's your fault.
And if you watch the DSAC team come in, I don't know if you saw the DSAC display.
They were great.
I did.
That was incredible.
I can't recall.
DSAC comes in. I'm not going to go over because Paul.
Oh, that was the guy who talked about Finland.
Yeah,
Yes,
Paul
I did see
basically
that.
talked about that the last show.
They have a great school.
He brought up. They got a great school system. They don't have any computers, but they're technologically challenged. And Paul talked about that, and it was the same thing with dealing with this overseer. And I'm starting to realize, when he's talking, he's up there and he's talking to Dr. Malvi, and you have a very competent, superintendent, you have a very competent business manager. Well, that may well be, but how come nobody's having any trust instilled in the district at the end of the day? And the Department of Education, I am thoroughly convinced, doesn't really care. Because last thing I said to Roger Young was, I said, I'm at the point, I'm so frustrated with this district, I would rather see the state come in and take this whole thing over. And he turns around and he goes, you don't want that. And I'm like, you work for the state. How could that possibly be a bad thing? And he's like, oh, you don't want that to happen. I said, yeah, I think I do. I said, I don't trust some of the members of the committee. I'm not sure that I trust the superintendent under the best of circumstances. I said, I can't get straight answers. I said, as a district, we're totally flummoxed right now. I said, if they put an override forward right now, and this is the way they're going to keep doing this, they're going to kick this budget out. They're going to have a budget hearing for an hour next Thursday night at 6 o'clock, and then at 7 o'clock will be the regular school committee meeting. It's like, is this a responsible way to do this?
Yeah, and that's the part I don't understand. How they have there's so many questions out there. At the end of last meeting, you made motions, which were some were in the form of requests of the superintendent to go find information. Others were in the form of telling the superintendent what to do, which I was glad. Actually, Dr. Malvi said what he said,
Right.
Which was basically you're
was-
treading in
so
an
you're
area
getting
that
dangerously
actually
close
you're
to
coming
personnel.
close, yeah, and you're violating the Ed Reform Act, or could violate it if you keep going down this path. Yeah. So I was happy he actually said that, but now you're going to have a hearing next week, and there's 10 items on the table. I don't recall how many, but sorry to interrupt, but let me just finish my thought. You're trying to, if I go to that hearing to speak, well, what questions am I going to ask? Because I'm wondering about Lake Street and whether they're going to, where are you finding the money for the workbooks that you're trying to put back in the $17,000 or the assistant principal at Wire Village? If Lake Street doesn't close, does that still go forward? These are a lot of questions. So you're going to give me a chance to speak, but I'm not going to have all of the answers. And the answers may come later. And at that time, I might be able to speak as the average citizen. Or if you don't have if it's not at a meeting where there's citizens' input, maybe the chair lets you speak, maybe he doesn't. Right. Maybe he lets you ask questions, maybe he answers them. So to me, it's you've put all these things on the table, and now you're saying, well, yeah, we're having it a week away, but they have until March 25th to give us the answers on the other pieces. So, and I'm going to have more. Any citizen might have questions
create more
after
questions.
March 25th. And are you going to have another hearing? Is this going to be a listening tour, or what? Or a Q&A? What's the answer to that? It seemed as though when we had, I don't recall every time, but I'm 90% sure every time we had the public hearing, we were at a consensus of where we were going, or there was going to be the answers were going to be at that hearing.
Right.
When we met with the administrators, I remember we met with each administrator. We all got a chance to ask questions, and it was a long, drawn out process. And it was a very and to Ralph's favor, I can say it was a good process. I mean, it was we did the due diligence. We took the time. We met with everybody. Then there was a public hearing, and you pretty much had an idea we weren't happy with the budgets that were going on at the time. I remember every time we sat down, we never saw the budget until we sat down at the table. And that was a little bit disconcerting, to say the least. But apart from that, it was the fact that at least we tried to do the right thing, and we tried to steer this thing. So we all had eyes on the budget at every single process. This committee hasn't done that. Not this committee, but the leadership of this committee hasn't done that, and has not asked for that, and has not focused on that, and has not said, okay, listen, we're not in any, we know we're in financial turmoil. Okay, fine, but all the more reason to start this process early. Let's get eyes on this. Let's educate the citizens. Let's let them see this process going on, which they're certainly letting you see this process over a 3-night period, which I thought was remarkable.
I just want to.
And I'm being facetious. It was ridiculous.
I
It was
want to
like-
understand how we're doing this year after last year we got killed for this.
That's
I remember one of them. One of the public hearings, Mary was out. I chaired it, and we had the public hearing actually in the middle of the meeting, and then we voted on a budget. We kind of knew where the budget was going that night, but we did the public hearing, and we were torn to shreds for doing them on the same night. And we're doing it again. And I don't think we're going to be able to vote on a budget on Thursday. I don't. We don't
The
have
other
enough
piece of that,
information.
though, is there was a lot more people in the room last year.
oh my
And
God.
even the year
yes.
before,
It
there
was
was a lot
packed.
more
There
people.
was standing room
I
only.
sat in that room, and I think I might have mentioned this to you. Everybody who was in that room that was yelling at us before the meeting, after the meeting, during the meeting, none of them are in the room now.
No.
Or maybe there's a handful.
No,
But
'cause
last night,
it's
how
mostly teachers that were there. The teachers on the left side were East Brookfield teachers.
But I
on
think
the right
some of those
side were
same teachers
administrators.
there were some teachers that were there last
yeah.
year, and
Yeah,
they have
that's
always
possible.
been there.
That's
So I
possible.
won't say that none of them are there, because those people tend to show up
East
to see
Brookfield,
what's
the
going
East
on.
Brookfield teachers, that core group, they always
Yep.
show up, and God love them, because it's
Yep.
like at least they're interested and they care about what's going on, and I respect that.
Yeah, and there's I forget her name. I think it's I think she's a sped teacher from Spencer that's always there taking notes as well.
Oh yeah,
and,
yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
But she, the loudest people in those rooms for the last 2 years, they're gone.
They're gone.
They're gone. They're not there.
All-
They'll show back up when the
boobers.
when,
Override
when it
time.
hits the fan again.
Well, they'll be there.
So they'll show back up, and it'll be everybody else's fault.
Yep.
But it's they disappear. They don't pay attention, and then this is what happens.
Well, see, this is the amazing thing. This is why originally I wanted to call this show Groundhog Day, because the same stuff keeps happening again and again and again. And, obviously Paul and Josh came up with a better name. But the irony here is it still keeps happening again and again and again. And this time next year, people could be sitting here saying, oh, you bastards, you should have gotten it right this time. And it's like, where were you?
No.
Everything, it's like they say democracy doesn't operate in a vacuum. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. There's very few people that actually pay attention to it, and the ones that pay attention to it are sitting there. We're banging our heads against the wall going, how can we keep doing this again? And it's like, and to have the two members of the committee absolutely shredding you guys, you all need to resign. Well, that's an answer. You're both business owners. That's the obvious answer. Let's not go at this with how can we make this better? You all need to resign. Just right across the board.
It's all right. This time next year, somebody will be up there yelling at them to resign.
It may not even take that long.
I had a question for you guys. You guys are sitting in the audience. It's hard to see everybody. You can
All 16
depending on-
people?
Yeah, it's kind of hard depending on how Aaron does the lights and everything. You're sitting up there going like this.
Aaron, I
trying
think
to
that
talk
was a
to each
shot
other.
at you.
Sorry, Aaron. I
Don't
just
look
heard
at the
him.
lights.
How many people were sitting in that audience last night, or any of those 3 nights, that weren't on the payroll?
Me,
Me,
Matt,
I was there
Joe
2
Fish,
nights.
Aaron.
Less than 6?
Yeah,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
maybe a half a dozen, maybe a little more.
I'd say anywhere from a half a dozen to a dozen max.
There's your problem. Nobody shows up for any of this stuff. Nobody cares. They care enough to yell at you, but they don't care enough to show up and do anything with it. So You know, and you can blame all kinds of different reasons. You can have all kinds of excuses, but if you're not going to show up,
Well,
especially at budget time, I mean, this is when we're supposedly blowing your money.
Well, and,
You
that, and
know?
that brings up a good point. Mary Brandy was at the budget meeting Tuesday night, and I got done, and I turned around, and she was sitting behind me, and I turned around, looked at her, and I said, you can't feel comfortable with this budget process. And she just shook her head, and she says, not really. You know, and she didn't expand beyond that, but it's like, I said to her, I said, and I explained the same misgivings I explained to you, and I've explained how many times you and I talk about it all the time with Paul. And the same thing you and I talked about last night. You can't keep doing the same stupid thing and expecting a different result. That is the ultimate definition of insanity. And this district just keeps doing the same thing. And I think it goes back to what you said, Matt. There's a serious lack of stability at a lot of different levels. You know, I mean, we didn't mention Lake Street. I think Lake Street's in good hands. You know, that's another
Yeah, Lake
another
Street
area
is,
where
yeah.
there's a decent amount of stability. But I think we do have areas where there's a lack of stability, or look at the professional development day they had today. Instead of having, and I would love to see this happen for the teachers, a full day of professional development. Instead of, they had hour-and-a-half segments of professional development today. And it's
We
like,
don't wanna
how do
get
you
them
do
started
that?
on professional.
It's like,
yeah.
we don't want to get
Let's
them
go back to
started
the
on that.
budget.
Yeah, let's go back to the
oh my
budget.
God! It's like, well, it's you know what? It's not working. We're not working as a cohesive unit to do anything. We're doing like bits and pieces of everything over here, and instead of concentrating. Jack Gagnon had a good comment to me when I saw him a couple weeks ago. He said, "Find one thing you can hang your hat on and do it right." He said, "Remember we used to have a great music program. The band was world renowned. They were known." The Cotton Bowl, the Rose Bowl, they did all kinds of stuff. They were nationally renowned. We need to have something like that, something positive in this district again, just to focus on. Give these kids something to hang their hat on, and give the district something to hang their hat on. And I thought that was a good, for
So-
lack of anything, you know, it's not going to cost a ton of money. At least it might get us moving in the right direction.
So with all of our complaining tonight, have we established anything?
Yeah.
What have we come to a consensus?
I'm just a guest.
Yeah, we're
I'm
looking
just-
at. We're looking
we
at.
need
Oh no, you're not
consistency.
committing now, pal. You're not committing.
This is the first.
No. That's not how that
This
works.
is the first meeting of the school committee support group.
Yes, alcohol
And,
will be involved at a later date. Absolutely.
This is our first meeting. We even had an agenda, so which we didn't do anything.
Well, we got a
else on the
couple. We got a
agenda.
couple minutes left. Aaron, could you do me a favor and put that Dan Martin update up on the board one more time, please? And please, by all means, you know, send cards to Dan. This kid is, as I'm sure you're aware, he lost his leg in a horrific snowmobile accident. I guess he's doing a lot better, and he would certainly love our thoughts and prayers and our support. So anything the folks could do, I think, would be fantastic. I know the Martin family would definitely appreciate it, and we will keep you updated from time to time, and let you know what's going on. Any final thoughts, Matt? Thanks for coming in tonight. Any final
Thank you
thoughts?
very much.
Thanks for having me. I don't have any final thoughts. I'm
You are a former school committee member.
yeah. I'm thoughtless.
Josh, anything?
I am not a former school committee member, so
You are a current school
I'm a
committee
current
member.
school
Yeah.
committee
And
member.
you are a happy school committee
I'm
member.
very happy, very happy. I just think that we need to do this whole process better. I think you're absolutely right with the consistency. I think that is important. I think the transparency, even though we hate that word, it's true. Show where all the money went. Open the books up. Anybody who wants to look, because if you want to look, look. If you don't look, then it's your fault for not looking. Come and look at it. We've got nothing to hide. I don't think we have anything to hide.
Yeah, you just got to be careful when you say that.
I don't think
You're-
we do.
you're
Last
an
time I
hour.
heard someone say, "No, there's no money in Spencer."
I have
we
no
all know what
idea.
happened.
I don't think there's anything to hide. I really don't. I don't think. I don't know. I come look at the books and tell me. Should we be hiding something? I don't know. I just think I think you're absolutely right. We need some transparency. We need some consistency.
We need to build trust.
Yeah. We need to suck a little less.
No.
And well, that's. I don't think I could put any better than that.
Baby steps.
Folks, thanks for joining us again tonight. We'll be putting up our show's next schedule. We're trying to do every other Thursday. We will let you know on our Facebook page. And again, thank you to all the folks on Facebook that have been supporting us. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. And thanks to Aaron Keys for running the producer's booth tonight, as he does every time we're here. thank you very much. And to Josh, to Matt, thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you next time. Take care.